Let's have a look at this NPCC document. It's been bothering me for a while. Okay, so it's the Auditors Social Media Bloggers Initial Guidance version 1.4. Don't know why it just doesn't say photographers, because we all know that if auditors and social media bloggers didn't have cameras, there wouldn't be a problem. Now, make no mistake, this is not a document produced by some proactive group with its finger on the pulse. This is as reactionary as it gets. They've been forced to publish this guidance again because the lunatics are running the asylum. We're now 12 years on since they produced the ACPO document that told them how to behave when targeting law-abiding members of the public who were out taking pics. And here's that ACPO document. Now, for those that don't know, the police used to abuse photographers around a decade ago using Section 44 of the Terrorism Act. And they used to use the threat of terrorism to just effectively stop and search anybody who had a camera who was taking pictures. I mean, you know, simple stuff like taking shots of the Houses of Parliament from across the river. They'd stop them, they'd go through the bags, they'd have a look at whatever the contents were, the pockets. Oh, it was just awful. Police used these powers just in a 1 year period between April 2008 and March 2009. They used it 250,000 times. It's quite unbelievable, quite shocking, that is. And when they tried to drop it, when they tried to decrease it, they managed to get it down to around about 400 people a day being stopped. So I wonder how many terrorists are actually found using this method. They recognised that this was a problem. They knew that they'd lost control of the PCSOs and the officers out and about on the streets. And it says here, privately, senior officers are exasperated, depressed and embarrassed by the actions of junior officers, and particularly PCSOs, who routinely misuse this legislation. It just shows, give them a little bit of power and what they want to do with it. Ultimately, it was then repealed. Obviously, we have to ask ourselves this: what does this say about the police? That 10 years after Section 44 was repealed, we still have officers using it. To this day, they try to use a law that doesn't exist. How bad is that? How bad is their training that they are continuing to do that? Now, it's very likely that the members of this NPCC group have been absolutely more than happy with this sugary diet of cop programs over the last 25 years. The likes of road wars and police camera action interceptors. You know, why wouldn't they be? Because they have a say in editing and the censorship. They convince the public that the police are hard-working and honest, decent people who put their lives on the line, saving us from these evil beings sat in their living room smoking some wacky-backy. The main catalyst, I think, that changed everything was the camera phones. As soon as we started making our own movies, capturing the reality of policing in the UK, it was game over, and they were just like deer in the headlights. It confirmed everything that was coming out of the inquiries. It confirmed everything that we were seeing in the prosecutions and the misconduct hearings. And now it was for you to watch. I'm not the biggest fan of the BBC, but the latest 3-part series called 4 Lives is depressing. Just shows how the police really behave, and it just confirms all the fears. So they've asked Helen Maunder to write this new document, and I'm sure Helen won't mind me telling you that she's a big fan of the police, and she's keen to let the public know that she too has been a victim of crime when her house was burgled. Now, you know, I'm not making a joke of that. It's not nice anybody's house getting burgled, but Helen was very fortunate because she says that as a victim of crime, the response and the support that she got from the police was, and these are her words, absolutely fantastic. She also says that being a part of the police family, she feels really, really privileged. And I imagine that privilege would be the word that most auditors would think as well, actually, Helen. It's actually hard to imagine a more grudging document than what Helen has produced. And it's quite insulting as well that we're paying for it. One of the first things I've noticed is that they want to ensure that the public experience consistent levels of service. But it makes you wonder how they can achieve that when the next sentence, suggests that it will require operational choices to be made at local level. Well, if you're going to give them the opportunity to have different options and to make different choices, then it's never going to be consistent. Now, considering Helen says she's got 120 staff beneath her, you'd think that one of them would be able to proofread this document for her. She's got the contents flowing into the title page, and then she's got the sections that flow into the contents page, which means that it throws all her page numbers out. Really? So let's go to 1.1. There's an increasing number of reported incidents within the United Kingdom regarding auditors and social media bloggers. It might be me being prickly here, but why is it an incident? Why do they suggest that there's reported incidents of photographers, of auditors, of social media bloggers? Why are the incidents? Somebody goes up to a police officer and says, "Can you give me directions?" They won't record that as incidents of people needing directions. It's arrogant to suggest that you know the purpose of an auditor or a blogger. Many turn up to see if their rights are going to be respected. Some actually turn up, film, and don't upload. Some actually turn up, take photographs, and don't upload. Some auditors have suggested that they're attending now to either try and educate the police or build a bridge between the public and the police. So for you to suggest that you know the purpose is always going to be capturing staff and live streaming it to social media platforms, it's just simply arrogant, that. 1.3. The auditors use security concerns surrounding the filming of staff and premises alongside limited powers to prevent it. We just photograph. It is the police that use pseudo security concerns. It is the police that pretend that us photographing their cameras, their cars, their gates, their doors, the patrol cars, anything that we photograph, it is you, the police, that make out it's a security concern. And because of that, that's what you think gives you license to abuse us. Now you say it's alongside limited powers to prevent it. Well, if it's lawful, why would you want powers to prevent it? And if you want powers to prevent it, why don't you seek it through your MP? Why don't you lobby for it? Because this just sounds like sour grapes. They appear to provoke staff and site security into potentially embarrassing reactions, often asserting that staff are overstepping legal boundaries. Well, I suppose we could reword this to say that staff do overstep legal boundaries. They embarrass themselves and they are provoked by people acting lawfully. They are also well versed in their own rights and often cite legislation in their interactions with staff, and any perception that they are under police surveillance is likely to be challenged robustly and potentially publicly. So why would you be surveilling somebody that's acting lawfully? And why would you perceive that it is a perception when we all know that they follow photographers? We know that they wish to find out anything that they can about the photographer. and in certain circumstances they have waited for the photographers to get into a car or into a vehicle, and then we'll follow them and pull them over. It's not a perception that they're being surveilled. We know it happens. Alright, 1.4. Auditors/bloggers should not be confused with hostile reconnaissance, which by its nature is covert. Okay, once again, this has not been proved. As it's suggesting, it's the auditors and the bloggers that should not be confused. What I think Helen is meaning to say here is the activity of auditing and blogging should not be confused with hostile reconnaissance. Hostile reconnaissance will cover and test security vulnerabilities, patrol routes, shift patterns, layout of a venue, and security practices. Security vulnerabilities. Right, now obviously I'm no expert, but how about you find out where your staff are? And then what you could do is perhaps find out what they're doing. And if they're sleeping, which surely makes them vulnerable, get them to do a bit of work, like they're being paid for. Now, I don't like putting money into the pockets of police officers. I think they do that very well themselves. But here's a book by an ex-police officer who used to work in Staffordshire. And he sums up rather eloquently his idea of what police management is about. I'll read it to you now. Police management is much more about the management of inactivity than it is about reducing crime. The real challenge being to do as little as possible, take as much credit for any successes as possible, and blame the rest on society. I think once you understand this theme, you can apply it to any activity undertaken by the police. See if you can apply it to the patrol routes that we know so well. Shift patterns. Wonder how we can crack this one.
Thursday and Friday, 2 till 11 Thursday, 8 till 5 in the morning on Friday, Christmas Eve. And then next week, he's back in the same shifts. So
Right.
we must work together, yeah.
Right. Layout of a venue. Here's a layout of a venue. We see layouts of your venues all the time. We see them on the police programmes. Security practices. Okay, Jesus. And security practices. Right, well, we are all aware. If it wasn't for your security practices, we wouldn't be here now, would we? If you have a reasonable suspicion that it is hostile reconnaissance, please report into your regional counter-terrorism unit. How often does that happen? And if it doesn't happen, why not? Is it because you don't have reasonable suspicion? Is it because they'll actually just laugh the cocks off at you? So, ACPO Guidance for Photographers 2010. This should have been enough. We don't need anything other than this. This should have been enough. Auditors bloggers have referred to the ACPO Guidance for Photographers 2010 document during some of their recordings. For the purposes of this guidance document, the following points from the ACPO Guidance for Photographers 2010 will continue to act as the guiding principles. Well, what they're saying here is that this document should have done. We didn't need another document. The fact that they're dressing it up as this will continue to act as guiding principles. Well, what does this say that 11 years on, you are not guided by it? 3. How to respond to police auditors. It is important to remain calm and professional. Okay. If responding to a situation where someone is recording a public civil service premises or staff, their first interaction could be with anybody in policing, but is likely to be the front counter staff. No, wrong again. It's rarely with the front counter staff. It is equally important to have an appropriate response if questioned by these groups, with the knowledge that they are looking for an appropriate response by police or to be unlawfully detained. Once again, you don't know that. They might be looking to see if our police force is as good as they always thought it was. 3.3. These individuals frequently ask if they are being detained or what the basis is for their detention. Absent a reasonable suspicion, an appropriate response would be to tell the persons that they are not being detained, they are free to leave at any time, and they are free to continue with their activities. Yeah, because that happens a lot, doesn't it? 3.4. If an attempt to obtain personal details should be made, the auditor blogger must be informed that there is no legal requirement for them to do so. How often does that happen? Down to 3.5. Some auditors bloggers also respond by saying they feel threatened or intimidated by staff. If they do, it is acceptable to ask them how your presence is threatening to them. Explain what you are doing to make them feel threatened. You can also reinforce that you are simply asking them questions and they are not being detained. Right. Have you actually seen any of these videos, Helen? Have you seen the fact that 14 police officers can come out of a station, weaponise police officers and surround the auditor? Are you aware that they grab them? Are you aware that they put them in cuffs? If you do feel auditors, bloggers' behaviour might represent blah 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 blah, clearly articulate why you are using them. Well, they don't clearly articulate. They still don't clearly articulate. And the reason that they don't is because they don't know the law. They often try and use laws that are out of date. Section 43 of the Terrorism Act 2000 should be a last resort. Once again, it's not. It's sometimes the first resort. They don't even question. They just jump out of the car, they grab, and then they use that. And this is recent. Look at any auditing videos.
that have been carried out in the last month, and you will find them. This is how good they are at taking on information, the police force. This is how willing they are to educate themselves. This is how good the training is. That they still jump out and use Section 43, and sometimes Section 44. Number 5, circulation of guidance. All staff should be briefed on this guidance. Well, it's quite obvious that they're not. The fact that you can get numerous officers that will come out of a station and not one of them will be aware of this guidance. So why don't you do some, rather than say all staff should be briefed on this guidance, why don't you put some measures in place that will ensure that they are briefed on the guidance? And if you are confident that they are briefed on the guidance, what is going wrong? Are they just ignoring the guidance? Do they not care what the guidance says? Deal with it. Unintentional. Right. Okay. Auditors bloggers will also notice any unintentional indiscretions, such as defective car, uniform, etc., all of which can be uploaded onto their channel. Well, Helen, just in the same way that you felt that you know the motivation and purpose of all auditors, you've now come to the conclusion that you know that all indiscretions are unintentional. How do you know that? How would you know that? Is this prejudicial? Staff should not use any type of inappropriate or offensive language when interacting with auditors' bloggers. Well, maybe staff should not use any type of inappropriate or offensive language when interacting with anybody. Staff should report all incidents to local intelligence teams. Oxymoron. 5.3. The Forces Corporate Communication Department should be notified of any incidents in order to support any subsequent public confidence issues and responses that may be required. Right, well, I'll put up Helen's email address so you can contact her with your thoughts over this. Perhaps the biggest elephant in the room here is the reason that the police react the way that they do, the way that they hate scrutiny, the way that they hate being observed, they hate being recorded. They don't like it being highlighted that they're aggressive, that they're bullies, that they're lazy. They just don't like it. And the overriding reason for this, to my mind, is that they are used to being the predator and not the prey. And because the cameras are pointing at them, they're feeling like prey items rather than the predators that they are. I'm no psychologist, but if you have a group of people, weaponized people, who start regarding themselves as not equal to the people that they're serving, but as predators and you as prey, where do you think that might end up? Is this why we have so many problems with the police? Is this why we have so many despicable acts being carried out by the police? Like I say, I'm no psychologist, but it makes you think, doesn't it?